Hello, this is Bike Chat 101 with Jonah DiPascale and me, Gunnar Anello Grande. Hi there. Hopefully other people can find us now that the link has changed.
Yeah, that's okay. That is kind of one of the things about live streaming. It is new, and obviously, of course, Blab being beta. Ironically, I was watching a Blab today with Frank Butkus, You Are Mechanic, and he was having some major technical
Oh,
difficulties.
yeah. I was watching that too, and he switched over to Periscope and finished up that way. That was actually a good show that he put on there. I enjoyed that.
And the only other major issue that I do have, unfortunately, the UX with from device to device. Like, unfortunately, my work PC is not adapted with a webcam, so I'm dead in the water. Obviously, I can jump in and comment, but and even from a mobile perspective, it's terrible. So.
Right.
It kind of is what it is. So, all right. Well, like I said, I think we definitely want to take advantage of the time we have. We certainly can kind of keep this short, sweet, and tight. I know that over the past couple weeks, there have been I think, some reoccurring themes, if you will, that I want to touch on. You had actually you did a scope that touched on two of the key points, and I want to build on one of the ones as well. I think a lot of times when folks are thinking about biking and cycling and those kinds of things, there are a lot of those trivial sort of like, basic maintenance type things or basic one-on-one things that I believe are beneficial.
Right.
And Gunnar, you did a great job the other day. Folks, if you didn't see that, Gunnar was out riding his bike on a lunch ride, kind of talked about some critical types of things, but did, I believe, a phenomenal job stopping, and then actually talking about lubing your chain. I mean, we know myself and many of you out there that may or may not know of these basic types of things, but there's definitely some of those core things you want to do. So maybe we touch on some of those fundamentals, because I know those are pretty important, and we can kind of sort of open this up. You talked about lubing your chain. Obviously, for folks, recap. Obviously lubing your chain is important, and then one of the important things that Gunnar had talked about was regular routine maintenance of the chain. See, a lot of people forget about that. It's definitely not a set it and forget it. And Gunnar, you had mentioned something that struck a chord with me and folks out there. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, is if the chain wears out or stretches, that does happen. That is probably not a good thing for your drivetrain. And what we mean by drivetrain, we are talking about the chain rings on your crank and the cassette. And the bottom line is it can be very expensive, because of the fact of the matter is you definitely need a new cassette, which are the gears on the back. You definitely need a new chain. Not necessarily the front chain rings. That's a very extreme case scenario, but the chain itself, when it does become dry, what happens is the friction of the chain does heat up, and again, what happens is as that chain is coming into the link, or the into the teeth of whichever, whether it's the cranks or the gear, it can do some pretty substantial damage to your drivetrain. And again, to Gunnar, your point, when you do change them over, if it's a new chain, right, and those gears are worn, those folks of you are wondering where I'm going with this. It's a very climactic pop, 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 and it's not fun. I can tell you, I've been to many races on many rides, and I've witnessed people that have just sort of decided to take the shortcuts and do that. So that was the one thing that Gunnar, you had talked about, that I wanted to touch on. Also, too, I thought you did a great job talking about the choice of lubricants. I know Frank Butkus, You Are Mechanic, he was talking about that, and it's definitely it's critical as far as using the proper lubricants. Now, I know it's not a 2-in-1 household lubricant. WD-40, ironically, we hear a lot of people talk about that. It's a catch-22, because they have moved into the cycling lubricants world. So as I said, not to confuse the folks maybe watching now or watching this on a replay. So there are specific lubricants. You'd said you had T2. Is it T2 Gold?
Boshield T9.
T9. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
T9. There's many types of lubricants, folks. We're not, we don't want to bore the daylights out of you with the specifics, but I would say
Right.
that in a nutshell, and again, there probably might be a couple different segments. They're really, for most premises, there's a dry lube, there is a wet lube, and there's a many different nomenclatures there. If you ask many cyclists what their preferences are, typically, and I could be wrong, Gunnar, you tell me, roadies like to go with the drier lube because again, it doesn't attract dust as much. Where us, mountain bikers, we generally like to kind of focus on that wet lube so that it sheds the dirt and the contaminants. I mean, it's a little bit gunkier, but I mean, obviously, being a mountain bike, it's going to get dirty anyway. So as
Right.
I said, I just wanted to kind of throw that out there, Gunnar. You'd done a fantastic job, and I wanted. And Frank, ironically, talked about that in his Blab today. I don't know if you saw that.
Right. Yeah. I did see that. That was quite a compliment that he actually mentioned that. So I was kind of thrilled about that. So, and that's a guy that knows his stuff, especially when it comes to vehicles and cars and maintenance and that type of stuff. So definitely was some kudos from him. Jonah, while I got you on here and while we're still seeing if anybody joins in, I know that you had mentioned that you occasionally ride a fixed gear bike.
Yes.
And I myself have a fixed gear also, but I'm wondering why would you choose to ride a fixed gear bike over a regular bike or a geared bike, and maybe explain to the people what a fixed gear bike is and why would someone want to ride one of those? Because a lot of people don't know, and a lot of people are confused as to why you would do that.
Yeah, absolutely, Gunnar. That's a great point. Fixed gear bikes have really kind of derived from a couple different, cultural aspects of cycling. I mean, first and foremost, I mean, obviously track, the velodrome or the oval racing. I mean, that certainly is where most cyclists kind of tune into the old school pictures of the dude with the giant stovepipe legs and the one piece racing suit. True, it is still a very active aspect of competitive cycling, but ironically, that particular aspect of cycling was earlier adapted by New York City messengers, for example. Many of the metro areas, very popular, and then over a period of time, it certainly became more of a culturally accepted thing to ride not only a bike with one gear but a fixed gear. And the reason for the fixed gear, I think, started out number one over the simplicity. As you had shown in your previous scopes and blabs, your Gary Fisher Paragon, I believe it is a Paragon, right?
Yes.
Okay, so your bike, it's a mountain bike, it has gears. We talked about a number of different things that you need to be concerned with, maintenance, those kinds of things. But mainly why I ride a fixed gear bike is it's twofold. As I mentioned, without question, it's simplicity. I love it. It is clearly a set it forget it. There are no cables. There is no shifting. Um, from a mechanical perspective, though, it is a little bit of a learning curve. I can tell you two things I would not recommend doing is what I did when I first got my fixed gear bike. I decided to forego a brake, and it was good and bad, but I realized how quickly and how scary it could be when I tried to slow the bike down. And again, the reason being is that if you've ridden a bike, whether it's a coaster bike or traditional coaster bike or even a freewheel bike, whether it's a BMX or what have you, it's very it's very second nature when you're pedaling to say, okay, well, I'm going to stop and coast. Um, Getting to your point, Gunnar, about a fixed gear bike, I mean, the fixed gear means that it's constantly on. So again, there is no off switch, there is no coasting, and essentially the theory is that you have to kind of work on that finesse or that cadence or that pedal stroke, and then really what you're doing is you're learning how to kind of pulse the pedals. I mean, it's a fairly I say it's a fairly complex thing as far as trying to explain the kinesiology of it. But simply put, if you decide to ride from here to the corner to 7-Eleven and you ramp up the speed and start moving, again habitually, if you try to like relax and coast, you'll get that kind of bucking bronco effect. I can
Right.
recall the first time that I tried to ride a fixed gear bike. And mind you, when you get onto a bike, I mean, mentally you're thinking, oh, okay, great, I'm going to start pedaling and stop and coast. Well, you cannot. So
Right.
the other advent of really why this particular bike, the fixed gear bike, has become sort of a key, really a key component of sort of my quiver. Again, simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. But I can tell you that it really does it does teach you discipline.
Mhm.
I think to the point of understanding a pedal stroke. Again, there's many scientific explanations of the perfect pedal stroke, and I certainly don't want to bore our audience with that. But I mean, typically, if you were to figure out a way to draw an image of how that pedal stroke would exist, on average, the folks out there watching. I mean, most if you were to depict this, most folks' pedal strokes would be sort of like a tall kind of oblong oval, and
Mhm.
the reason for that is that most people kind of think of pedaling sort of is this. So again, they're kind of like forward, up, and then down, forward, up, and down. And if anybody's ever heard the term of mashing your pedals, I don't necessarily think you intend to do that. I believe it's just that many people haven't been trained or really understand the proper kinesiology or the proper spin. For example, if you know many people that are runners that do marathons, well, guess what? They're much more efficient than running than you or I. Now, I don't
Right.
necessarily know if you're a better runner than I am, but I can assure you that my friends that are avid runners are much better runners than me because they understand the efficiency of it. So the
Right.
fixed gear bike
Right.
for me teaches a good level of efficiency. So my last bonus point to make is that I can tell you without question, when I do get onto my mountain bike, when I do get onto my cyclocross bike, especially my cyclocross bike, I really find that I'm able to keep a much smoother pedal stroke, but also it helps me to stay better connected to the pedal. Now, there's a couple other variables here. Most of I use clipless pedals, which most people don't really necessarily, they don't really agree with. A lot of the purists, they
Mm-hmm.
use like a toe clip, or
Right.
I
Right.
don't know
Right.
if you remember those like power
Yeah, the power
straps or whatever
straps.
they
Yeah.
are. And,
Yeah.
my hardcore fixie, and in fact, some just ride flats.
Right.
But again, if you're looking for a great bike that really is gonna change up, your quiver and how you ride, a fixed gear bike is the best way to do that. Also, too, for the price, you absolutely cannot beat it. I mean, you
Right.
spend. I mean, if you spend $300 on a fixie, that's a lot of money, and you're getting a
Right.
hell of a bike. So I think that's one of the things. Couple other takeaways that I think most people just want to pay attention to is definitely the setup. I mean, you want to. I mean, you're not. It's not necessarily any kind of special sizing. I mean, you'd size it normally like a bike. Typically, most enthusiasts generally go with a little bit smaller bike so that it is a little bit more nimble, especially
Mhm.
if you're trying to do any type of track stands or maneuvering. Me, I'm not necessarily worried about that. I basically have my cross bike and fixed gear bike are about the same thing.
Okay.
Drop bars versus uprights and narrows. Again, it's preference. I know typically a majority of the riders prefer that short, narrow, flat rise. All right, Dan,
Hey,
Redline
Dan.
Dan, he found us. All right,
Yes. Nice.
he's like, where have you guys been?
Yeah.
But again, to your point though, that's one of the things that I did learn. Again, I have the traditional drop bars. I
Okay.
like them, and why I like them is for me. I do find myself riding more distances. I again to sort of kind of cross train, I do ride I ride my fixed gear bike in group rides. So for me, it's nice to be able to stretch out and get on the drop. So I mean,
Right.
is it something you want to do? No. And then lastly, as far as a brake, typically most fixed gears, the brakes on the front. Ironically, the bike that I had for some reason didn't come with a front brake, so I put it on the back. But whatever. It is good to have. Now, why it's good to have here in upstate New York, and again, I don't know so much about Rochester, Minnesota. There definitely are some hills. I mean, I can tell you that I've got myself into a couple situations where I've literally, outrode the pedals, and I was like, wow, this is
Mhm.
not good, and it becomes very difficult once once those cranks get moving to slow them down. So,
Right.
great question. As I said, fixed gear bikes certainly a very good value. There's plenty of great resources. I know almost any major manufacturer builds them. Again, they're fairly inexpensive. So great question.
Right. Right. Well, and to expand on that too, so my fixed gear, what I did was I kind of went I guess the other way. Instead of buying a fixed gear bike off the shelf, I bought uh, off of eBay. I bought a frame, an old, I think it was like a 1980s specialized. I think it was a specialized Allay um, steel with lugs on it. I think they were made in Japan at the time, but I think I picked that up for like $50. Bought wheels and then just bought various pieces to fit on there, and uh, it it ended up being a really nice bike. Um, adding the fixed gear on there, and I kind of probably overthought the gearing
Yeah.
and the chain spacing and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, I made it so that it was really nice.
Yeah.
Gearing for here, yeah, we probably don't have as many hills as you guys have
Right.
out
Right.
there, but we do have some hills. So I mean, it's rolling terrain. But I think I set mine up with a 4217, so not a huge gear by some fixed gear riders' standpoints, but not a small gear either. But I was able to spin it, and like you, I've taken it on a couple of group rides where I'm on the fixed gear and other people are on geared bikes, and for the most part been able to keep up. Uh, I run front brake only. Um, Not that I would mind putting a rear brake on there, but I bought a front brake at first, and I've just kept it up that way. Um, and then last point about the fixed gear, kind of interesting, is that the the frame I have, so again, it's an older 80s specialized Allay. There's actually clearance for probably up to 32C tires. So what I've done in the past is during winter, or not winter, during the fall, as it gets into cyclocross season, I've actually ridden fixed gear cyclocross practice races with it by just throwing some 30C cyclocross tires on there. Obviously, I'm not keeping up with the geared guys or the really fast riders, but I'm getting a nice workout. And again, it does help with your spin. I think the only thing, though, is that I noticed when I started mountain biking again, um, the getting so used to not coasting actually hindered mountain biking for me.
Yeah.
I would go into corners and stuff, and I would continue pedaling because I'm so used to it. And on the road, I'm fine with it because I got the clearance, and I don't think I've hit a pedal on the road. I don't know, in 20 years or something.
Yeah.
But off road on the mountain bike, I was constantly hitting pedals into things as I'm leaning into corners and
Right.
and still pedaling because of the muscle memory and all that.
Yeah.
So actually, the last couple of years, I haven't ridden the fixed gear as much as I did a couple of years ago. So that was kind of an interesting thing that I kind of
Sure.
noticed.
Sure.
But
That is that's a good point. I mean, I think it's I don't know. I can definitely relate with what you're saying. I can say at one point or another, I have definitely experienced that. I think again, um, two things I can touch on that just sort of kind of segue with where you're going with this. I feel my biggest challenges and fears when I'm riding a fixed bike is cornering at speeds. It is super scary.
mhm,
and I can tell you that that's where my body English and mechanics break down. If you if the folks in the audience right now are trying to understand what we're talking about, let's picture, if you will, a turn. The turn has what is called as kind of an apex where you make the turn. So there's the setup and the wheel paths, and your front wheel steers, your back wheel doesn't. So your back wheel is going to follow, which is all fine and good. And normally on a bike that you can coast, right? You can essentially position yourself, and again, if you guys could see a full screenshot of me, I would be leaning the bike. My essentially my outer elbow would be pointed. My inner arm would be straight. And again, what I would be doing is putting the weight on the outside of my pedals. So literally my pedals, okay, would be at 12 and 6, okay, and again that would allow me to sort of carve through the turn. Now that was kind of a long-winded explanation of where I'm going to make this point. And when you're coming into a turn on a fixed gear bike on speed, again, mind you, back to what the original point was that I made to Gunner is I'm trying to get myself into that position. Now, mind you, even on a road bike, you can do that. Okay, it doesn't
Right.
matter if you have upright bar. So as I said, when I'm rolling into the turn, I'm thinking that, but again, and even to a certain degree, I'm sort of trying to relax and let the pedals coast, and I keep moving. So um, couple of things that I have done is when I've approached turns too aggressive, I have done what is called as a high side or a pedal stroke. So it's again it becomes a buyer beware thing. I believe that those are those are those are things that you may do like once or twice and realize that I probably don't want to do that. For example, um, how many of us have ever tested bikes that have either been too small, or if you guys remember like those old school toe clip basket things that were like 10 feet out in front of the pedal, and you put your pedals at like 3 and 9 or whatever it is, and you go to turn the wheel, right? And you hit your foot, and you're like, whoa, what the hell happened? And I mean, it's happened a number of times with me, but you realize quite quickly that's definitely not something you want to do, because
Right.
that's going to end up getting you in trouble. Now, most average consumers are probably never going to be in a situation where they're trying to rail or corner. I just think it becomes one of those things that you just simply need to be aware of. So the other thing that I want to kind of touch on, which is really great about a fixed gear bike, is they are incredible training companions. I think without question, my fixed gear bike is bomb proof. I mean, as long as the roads are not like slickery and icy, I have the bike gear to go out and ride. In fact, in in our region, there's the Genesee Valley Cycling Club, and they're pretty good about riding both Saturdays and Sundays through the winter, and they're doing like,
Nice.
I mean, they're doing like 40 miles. Like
Hmm.
that's like, for those
Yeah.
of you folks that don't understand 40 miles, it's a significant effort in chilly weather. So number one, you got to have your clothing dialed, because you're on the
Right.
bike, for a minimum of 3 hours. Minimum. I mean, especially if it's colder, depending on what you're doing. But again, the nice thing about winter is to Gunner's point, you're not worrying about gears, you're not worrying about cables. Um, oh, yeah, Dan says the significant longest period I've ever done is what, 35 miles. Yeah, we're gonna talk about that. That's a great point. So, but at any rate, the nice thing about it is, I have fenders. I put fenders on my bike. I love it. I don't have to worry about the salt. I don't have to worry about my cable seizing up.
Right.
It's nice. I mean, again, back to my original point about set it and forget it. I mean, after coming off a ride, I mean, you're an icicle anyway. I mean, I don't know if
Yeah.
you folks have done that. Dan, I'll touch on your question in a minute. I mean, I jokingly say you almost become mummified. I mean, literally, your hands are kind of in this position. and you literally can kind of barely open them, and you're kind of walking like this, and of course your toes in the shoes that you have, are already like this, and I always say, the best shower that you'll ever take is after a frigid ride outdoors. So it's good and bad. I mean, and literally the irony is about probably halfway through that ride, the only thing that you're thinking about is like, holy crap, I cannot wait to get in the shower. And then when you're in the shower, you're like, oh my God, this is a reality. I can't believe this is actually happening. Good stuff, man. Good stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, but again, I see Dan chimed in. Red flag Dan, he said significant period that you've ever done is 35 miles. So maybe, Gunnar, and we want to talk about that really quick. I gotta make an Elmo rescue here. If you'll just excuse me 1 second.
Sure. So the longest you've ever done is 35 miles. And that's actually pretty significant. I mean, that's a good, could be almost 2 hours, 2 hours on the bike there. So that's a considerable amount of time to be out riding. And, all depends on what your goals are for riding. Probably 80% of my rides are under 35 miles. Probably under 90% of my rides are under 35 miles. I generally go out 20, 25, and then it depends if it's off-road or road. So, that's not a bad thing, and it's actually pretty good. It's a lot more than probably a lot of people. So, you're doing good in that regards. I'm wondering if your goal is to go longer, then there's ways to do that. You can work on endurance. If you can pick, usually what I do is I pick 1 day a week and make that a long day. And usually what I do is I go by time. So I'll say on Saturday mornings I'm going to go out for a 3-hour ride or maybe a 4-hour ride, and do it that way. And then however many miles I get in that 3 or 4 hour time period is what I get. It looks like Jonah had to step out again. And so I don't necessarily go by mileage a whole lot. I mean, I keep track of it, but it's not, that's not usually how I track my rides. So hours wise. And so I don't generally get more than maybe 1 4 or 5 hour ride in per season. And so that would be kind of my longest ride of the season is maybe 100 miles. And I don't think I've even done that once this year. So, but it's something to build up towards, and you don't want to just go out and do a super long ride at one time. I think probably what the best way to approach it, at least from a training perspective that I've heard of, is to increase your longest ride by maybe 10%. So if you're going out, if you're using mileage, if you go out 40 miles one day, then maybe the next week work on getting to 44, 45 miles. And then the next week add 10% onto that. So Jonah, I was just, I was kind of blabbing on it there about that I usually go by time for training hours.
Yep.
And so I said that, and I was saying to Dan that 35 miles is actually a significant amount of time, amount of mileage to put in. So it's, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
And then I was saying that if he wanted to go further, maybe upping the mileage on his longest ride of the week by about 10% or so. I don't know if that's something you agree with or not. I think that's what I've read generally.
Yeah.
Just kind of, okay, well, so if you go 40 miles, well then, the next week maybe try to make it 44 or 45, and then the next week jump it up a little bit more. So you're not trying to overtax your system by getting, a 5-hour ride in at one time, and then you just kill yourself and you lose motivation and you don't want to ride again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a great point. Dan, the big thing is quality versus quantity. Again, for example, a couple days ago in my kind of routine, I had a little bit more of a longer, bigger block scheduled for my training, and I basically just said, all right, well, I'm gonna ride 30 minutes. The other thing though too is Gunner uses a lot of technology. The Garmin, those kinds of things. It's a catch 22. I mean, I'm typically more of a purist. I don't ride with computers. Again, I'm trying not to worry about like how fast I'm going, how many miles here. But as I said, to Gunner's point, it's just ease into it. 2 hours okay beyond. I have a Raleigh Rebuilt 1.0. Nice. Revenos. Awesome. The other thing though too is trying to avoid riding by yourself. If you can ride with groups, it's a lot more motivating. Those are some key factors that make life a lot easier. Also, to Gunnar, you brought up a great point. I mean, it's periodization. I mean, it's blocks of 4. You ramp up. It's like boom, 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 take a break, boom, 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 take a break. I mean, on average, I mean, most consumers, again, you got to remember, most people like think of it. I always had a hard time trying to think about riding in terms of hours, because think about it. You work, most people on average will work like a whatever. Let's take a 40-hour work week. Well, I mean, unless you're a pro cyclist, there's no way that you're riding 40 hours, because that would be your job or
Right.
more. So, I mean, again, if you figure an hour a day, if you're doing 8, roughly 7, 6 to 7 hours a week, that's a lot. So hang on a second. I'll be right back. Sorry.
Sure. But I just looked up real fast too, the Raleigh Revenio. Probably butchering the name there, but that's a pretty nice bike. It's aluminum frame, Raleigh. Nice to be able to get around with. I think that's a great bike. And wondering, did you get that at Eric's or? Yes. Red flag. Dan says yes. And 2 hours is okay. Beyond that, Dan says he feels beat up. And I think that's kind of typical. You get to the point where anything longer than a certain point, and you really feel it afterwards. I have another friend that he says he doesn't do a lot of endurance. He races mountain bikes, and so I think the longest they usually go for in a race is like an hour and a half. And so he doesn't structure his rides too much longer than that. And he does say that if he gets in a longer ride, he also feels beat up. He just can't break that 2 hour barrier for whatever reason. But he's okay with it because his races are an hour and a half long. So that's another consideration too. So I was just talking about Red Flag Dan. He says that 2 hours he's okay, but beyond that he feels beat up.
Yep.
And I was just saying that for some people too, it depends on their goals. So I was saying that I have a buddy that races mountain bikes, and his races typically don't go longer than an hour and a half, and so he doesn't usually train for more than an hour and a half.
Right.
So,
yeah, Dan said it's more of a skeletal beat up instead of a muscular beat up. Well,
okay.
One of the things that I really want to share with you, I think this is definitely a good takeaway, and I know that Gunnar, you and I will probably circle the wagons and maybe address this, but for a while with my training and my competitive cycling, I really felt like I sort of plateaued. And I don't know if you guys know what plateau means. Like you're just going, and like all of a sudden you just feel like everybody's getting faster than you, and you're getting third every race, or the same loop you do every time is the same amount of time. Nutrition. Okay, it's a whole entire blab, which we probably will focus on doing. But nutrition is huge. I will tell you, without question, 2 gems that are huge. I break for Ryan Kettering. What's up, Ryan Kettering? The freaking business mogul and dynamos in the house. Ryan Kettering, thanks for joining. We're just talking about nutrition here. It's a Red Flag Dan. So listen.
Right. Well, here, 1 second. Let's let everyone know that if you're getting some sort of value add on this, go ahead and tell the little bird up there in the corner
Yeah, buddy.
And that'll let your friends on Twitter know that you're getting something out of this, and maybe they can join in too.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. And like, again, if you guys are, just tuning in now, or you may end up catching this on replay, thank you so
Right.
much. And also to definitely give Anello Grande a follow on Twitter. He's on Instagram. Also myself, Joan DiPasquale, the Hoggle. You can find me on a
Definitely.
multitude of social platforms. So guys, nutrition, just like with your daily routine and forget cycling. I mean, just like with eating right. I'm on tonight in 2 hours. All right, Ryan Kettering, man. Boom. I'm there, man. All
Nice.
right, boom. Great business tips. I really actually, you know what? Total segue here. Boop. Did you, Gunner? Did you get that share that I sent you today? Ryan is doing some killer things with the screen catches and his videos. He gave me some great points and tips. I definitely would recommend connecting with him because he's got
Right.
a multitasking on a call. Nice. Awesome. But
Excellent.
anyway, if you didn't get a chance, you should probably go back and watch his replay.
Yeah.
He actually did. Okay, basically in a nutshell, he took his Periscope, downloaded it to YouTube, and then it was actually like a kind of like a frame that he put it in, which is really cool. And he had all this text and copy, and it made me think of the things that you do being a graphic guy. Okay,
Okay.
segue.
Excellent.
Nutrition. Just like when you're doing your daily grind, you get up, eat breakfast, eat lunch, eat dinner, whatever. Good food choices versus bad food choices. Okay, red flag Dan, this is for you. The two gem takeaways. Hydration. Okay, hydration is key. Drink often, drink always. Take more water than you need. I would say most people drink a lot less than they need. Most people are like, oh well, I'm not gonna sweat. I'll take one water bottle. Take two water bottles. You never know. It's good. I mean, if you ride and you drink a bottle and a half, fine. Or if all of a sudden you see you're drinking two water bottles, that's good. But my point is literally the number one issue that a lot of average or enthusiast cyclists have is they don't drink enough water. And if that's an issue, there's always hydration packs. There's many ways to again stay hydrated. So water. The next one is nutrition. Yes, you do need some type of supplement. Am I saying taking a vitamin? No, not necessarily. But my point to you is again, if you want to go basics, sure, it could be a granola bar, could be a couple cookies, it could be a half of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You have to realize that Gunnar and I sitting here we're not burning a lot of calories, but all of a sudden, again, if you start moving, you're active, you're riding, all of a sudden, you are, you're burning calories, and you don't realize it. And again, remember, you're moving so that you really, the sweat's being dissipated, so you don't physically know, wow, I've been working hard. So, for example, if I stand here and I'm gonna lift weights, well, of course I'm gonna start sweating, and I'll be like, holy crap, I'm burning calories. So getting to my point, you need to formulate and Gunner, I don't know if you mentioned, I think you may have done this. You need to formulate tests. Grab things you like, for example. Like I love Nutter Butters, for example. I don't know if you've ever had that crazy novelty cookie, but they're
Yeah.
but they're great. Peanut butter. Who doesn't love peanut butter? I'm old school. I don't have peanut allergies. I've got a big nose. It's not flaming up from a peanut allergy. But that's beside the point. What I'm trying to say though is, again, make it simple. I've had people, that do peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I've had people that do Nutella and peanut butter because they like the Reese's peanut butter. But
Mhm.
but what I'm saying to you is, you really need to make that effort. Now, if you want to try to experiment, oh my goodness, I did a scope a while back about all the various manufacturers: Scratch, Hammer, what is it? Cliff Shot, Honey Stinger. I mean, I can't even name all of the different, Power Bar, Jelly Belly. My point to you is,
Mhm.
take some time and go into a local shop and say, hey, my name is Red Flag Dan, and on average, I ride 2 hours, and I feel like I'm tanked. I'm telling you, without question, they will be able to recommend just exactly what you want to do. I will say to you, the last takeaway, this one's a bonus. I will tell you, I swear by two things. Either Nuunz, it's Nuunz, Nuunz, or Camelback Elixir. Those are the two products that I've used the most recently. There's many takes on that. Scratch Labs does variations on it, but what is it? It is an electrolyte powder that you put into your water. So it becomes more of kind of a passive means of staying hydrated, but staying energized. I mean, when we mean by energized, it's not like you're drinking coffee, but when you get off the bike, you feel refreshed. And I completely can relate with where you're coming from, Dan. That's a huge thing to think about. And lastly, not that I can kind of figure out how that ever happened, but boy, those things work really great when you're dehydrated from a night of drinking Stone Delicious IPA, which was another Blab,
Nice.
by the way. So Cliff Bars and shot. Yeah, there you go. Shot blocks.
There you go. Yeah.
I love shot blocks. Dan, two go-tos for me shot blocks. I think it's the cran raspberry with the caffeine in them. Those are huge. And the margarita ones with the salt are good too. Why the ones with salt are good is those prevent cramping when it is a little bit hotter, when you're really pushing yourself. It's really a whole different conversation to spend time understanding nutrition. I've spent many days and years and seasons trying to figure it out. Some better than other, but venues like this, asking other people, going to your local bike shop. I mean, those are without question probably the most valuable resources that you can go to. Because I mean, if you go to a shop, I mean, they're not gonna. I mean, the goal is they want to sell you something, but if you're asking them and telling them what you're doing, I think you'll find some benefit there, and that is going to be a big difference. Again, there's going to be a little bit of a cost to get into it. I mean, the nutritional supplements, I mean, it's not they're free, but I think that it is certainly worth your time. Also, to check your local bulk stores. You can get Cliff Bars pretty cheap and Power Bars. I generally stock up on Cliff Bars. The irony is you can get them a lot cheaper at Costco or BJ's or whatever your bulk store is that you have around.
Well, and another thing too is I think the guy that does Scratch Labs, he I think maybe it was 2 years ago, but he had a cookbook. And one of the things that he mentioned in that is he calls them rice cakes.
Yep.
And basically, instead of having to purchase energy bars or nutrition, he has a recipe on how to make these little, and they're like rice bars, and you can make them sweet, you can make them savory, but those are excellent. If you're looking for a way to maybe save a little money on your on-bike nutrition, basically just Google maybe rice cake and cycling, and you should come up with a ton of different recipes. Or I don't know if anyone's on Pinterest, but I know that there's recipes on Pinterest for it. And you can make them, you can freeze them. I've kept them in the freezer for like 6 months at a time. So I'll make like a huge batch. I'll put them in the freezer. You have them individually wrapped, and just pop a couple of those, even when they're frozen, into your jersey pocket. And even in early spring, when it's still, maybe 40 degrees out when you leave the house, your body heat is going to heat them up just enough that when you're riding, they soften up. They're great to eat. Perfect. And then I think, Jonah, you were talking about Honey Stinger. I love Honey Stinger. The little waffles, and then their version of their gel. They're not gels, but they're like jelly candies. Basically, those are awesome also. And then one last thing. Okay, so one last thing. After Easter season is done, I'll buy a couple extra bags of regular jelly beans, and I'll keep those on hand, and I'll get a little handful, stick them in a Ziploc bag, and take those on some rides. Mainly it's just sugar, that quick energy, There may not be as good as the Jelly Belly sports beans with the electrolytes in there, but if you're drinking an electrolyte drink, whether it's Scratch Labs or Cytomax or whatever you're choosing to drink, you're getting electrolytes from that. And actually, personally, I just do water, but I also carry Tums because Tums has calcium.
Yep.
Calcium is an electrolyte. So if I grab a handful of regular jelly beans, and then I'll grab a Tums, eat that, and kind of basically do the same thing.
Nice.
Last thing, I know the last time I said this was last thing. One last thing. So I do use technology. So I have a bike computer, but I also wear a watch. If you find yourself out riding and you realize, hey, I don't eat enough or I don't drink enough.
Right.
Most of the bike computers now, and maybe you need a watch or a smartphone, just set up a timer on there. I do mine for an hour. So my Garmin will beep at me every hour on the hour as I'm riding. And that'll remind me, hey, you've ridden an hour, you need to eat something. So I'll go ahead and if I haven't eaten anything within that hour, I'll go ahead and I'll eat a full energy bar, or I'll eat a big handful of something. And that way I know that I'm keeping on top of my nutrition at least once an hour. If I am scheduling a longer day, I might go every half an hour just so that I'm on top of it more. But if it's like a 3-hour ride, I can get by with every hour on the hour. So those are just a couple of little tips there from me. Jonah had some great tips there. So excellent stuff.
Yeah, no, that's definitely been, as I said, it's been probably one of the biggest breakthroughs that I've had with nutrition. So, again, we can kind of round robin this Blab here. We did, we obviously talked at the beginning about some maintenance. We kind of ramped it up into some technology. We talked about some nutrition. I mean, overall, I think that I think we really want to emphasize that this just isn't necessarily for strict cyclists. I mean, it's for all customers. I think I think a lot of people. There's like this presumptive like, oh, I can't I can't use cliff blocks, or I can't have take cliff shots, or even think about training. I mean, you're not to your point is it's not really like you're necessarily training. I mean, you're just using good logic. I mean, it's like, okay, if I'm gonna go to the store, to the mall, it's like, what's the best best route to take? I mean, that's kind of what we're trying to provide to our audience today. So those are really some key talk points. And obviously, like anything, there's plenty of other valuable resources that you can go and find more information on. I don't know about you, Gunnar. I do like there's a couple websites that I like. I like Bike Groomer. Bike Groomer is good. MTBR.com is really good.
Oh yeah.
Pink Bike's okay. I mean, there's a number of like core cycling related sites that you can go to that you'll get pretty good information. And you got to remember that people that are all avid consumers of their sport, I mean, they're going to be really good here. And if you'll excuse me, I just got to tend to something going on here. My kids having a total meltdown. I apologize about that. But at any rate, as I said, I don't want to necessarily leave the Blab high and dry. I think we're pretty good. Yeah, looks like Ryan's taking off. I'm pretty good. I think we're good. I think we can probably, obviously come up with some good talk points for next week's Blab, because it sounds like we already have some pretty good ideas. So it certainly sounds like nutrition is going to be, another one of those talk point components. So I don't know, Gunnar, if you want to wrap us up, we'll get going and move on to our night.
Right. Well, I just want to thank you, Jonah, for co-hosting with me. You've been doing a great job here on Bike Chat. Jonah Di Pasquale. I hope I say it right. Di Pasquale. Okay. Great guy. We've been hanging out both on Periscope and on here and going back and forth, and we seem to have a like mind. So I think it's been great co-hosting with you. So we'll be doing this again next week, and keep an eye out on Jonah's Blab channel, because he occasionally has other things. Yesterday he had a great thing with Roof Rack Rangers. Great app to check out if you use a roof rack on your car. And then just keep us in mind for next week, Thursday. We'll be back here talking about bikes. It's
Absolutely,
great.
absolutely. And again,
Yep.
like anything, if there's topics that we may have touched on, or you want us to go a little bit more deeper in depth, you can contact myself at the Hoggle on Twitter, or you can catch Gunner. It's Anello Grande. We're always open, and of course, like anything, I mean, we this isn't necessarily about us. We've got, as you see, we got 2 seats that are open. We always invite
Yep.
other folks to come in. So as I said, if you excuse me, dad duty is kicking in. I'm gonna
That's
sign
quite all
off.
right.
I'm gonna sign off for the night. So thanks for having me.
Have a good one.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll talk to you later. Bye. And thanks again, everyone else, for joining in. And again, if you catch this on the replay, go ahead and share it with your friends. And I guess one last quick shout out to Belch Gear. Look them up, belchgear.com. They make some great cycling jerseys as well as some fun cycling t-shirts. And they're going to be a big sponsor of the Filthy 50. Thank you and goodbye. Over and out.